I'd like to welcome everybody back to part two of Lunch with Layne. We have Dean Galigani joining us today. Dean, we're just getting into the interesting questions here. Can you tell us about some interesting matters that you've handled? Our students are always interested in war stories. Are there some particular cases that have really stuck out in your mind over the years?
Wow, we got a lot of war stories, don't we, Layne?
We do. We do.
You know, and a lot of our best war stories come from when we were public defenders out in Levy and Gilchrist County. And I was out there for 10 years. So I had a long stretch out there. And, you know, just some of the crimes you would deal with, a lot of hunting crimes, a lot of fishing crimes. You know, I'll never forget trying a case, a DUI case. There was a fellow with 2 or 3 prior DUIs. Gilchrist County, which is a small agricultural community, beautiful place, friendly people, loved working there, but very conservative. And they were building a new courthouse. And so they were holding court, which wasn't held very often then because it was a real small county, but one of the smallest populations in Florida. So they had us in a double wide. And Judge Philman.
Double wide mobile home, right? For
yeah. A double wide, and Judge Philman, Edward Philman, was our judge, and Judge Philman, who was a dear friend of mine, was also completely opposite of me personally. You know, was quiet, was very Southern, was very strict, very harsh sentencer, but was always straightforward. And we communicated on that level. We were always said what was on our mind. And I think we both appreciated each other for that. And as he got older and as I got older, we became very close until he passed. And so he was our judge. And you remember Judge Philman.
I remember him very, very well. Yeah. Rest in peace. Absolutely.
Yeah. Very strict. And so he's in this double wide, we're having a trial. And he's sitting behind a teacher's desk, which was unusual to have a judge below you as you're talking. And we had jurors sitting in plastic chairs. And my client had his, I can't remember whether it was second, third, fourth DUI. And he kept saying he couldn't hear because he had bad hearing. So Judge Philman had bought a thing from Radio Shack that you put in your ear and you held up a speaker in front of you. And so you can kind of amplify what was being said. And so we actually had a mistrial the first time because he couldn't hear what was being said. And so Judge Philman was going to fix it with this Radio Shack speaker. And so we're in the double wide. The acoustics were horrible in there. It echoed when you walked because we were off the ground. And he still said he couldn't hear anything. And at this point, Judge Philman's not believing what he's saying. Because Judge Philman knows if he's convicted, he's going to jail for quite a while. He had quite a traffic record. And my client's main defense, and I must have asked him, we must have went over it 50 times, but he kept coming back to his main defense was he was the Waukesasa Bass Club president. And I kept telling him that's not a defense to DUI. And so that was kind of the level of the communication we were having. And his wife was there, and she was from Gilchrist County also, and she had quite a record also. And so he was saying he couldn't hear. And so she raised her hand during the recess and said, Judge, he understands me when I talk to him. Because, you know, I can sit next to him and kind of tell him what's being said, almost like a translator.
Okay.
And so that's what we did. But her way of translating was just to say what was said that she heard really loud. And so every question that was asked, she would scream in his ear what was said.
It's like a Saturday Night Live sketch.
It was unbelievable. And so that was a trial that will always be memorable. In fact, I tried it against one of our circuit judges who was a prosecutor then. And I know I've heard him tell the story several times because he was the prosecutor on that case. I also had another case out there where, and this is for young lawyers, the most important first thing you learn, right? Don't ask a question you don't know the answer to in a trial, because the answer could not be what you want, and you may open the door to all kinds of other things you don't want to come into evidence. And so one of our local judges, I shall not name him, who was a friend then and is a better friend now. We were trying a DUI in Gilchrist County again, and they had a lot of DUIs for a small county. We were trying a case on a guy that I think it was his 4th or 5th DUI, who everybody knew in Gilchrist County. His name was Daryl, but he's a great handyman, but he also was a terrible alcoholic, obviously, with that many DUIs. And they loved having him at the jail because he would fix everything. He liked being at the jail because he would kind of, get the stuff out of his system, get straight again, and then go back out and slowly decline back into bad habits. And this is when you don't ask a question that you don't know the answer to. And this happened a long time ago. My memory's not that great now, but I remember it like it was yesterday. So the prosecutor, who's now a judge, and he learned his lesson on this day, my client refused to take the breath test. And so he doesn't know what my client's going to say to that. He has no right to talk to my client. My client didn't make any statements after he was arrested. And so it was a refusal. And he asked my client without knowing the answer, so why did you refuse the breath test if you had the right to take it? And he said, because I had a dip in my mouth, tobacco in his mouth. And he said, and it was my last dip, and I wasn't going to take it out of my mouth to take that breath test. And he goes, I have a dip in my mouth 24/7. And the prosecutor says, you don't have a dip in right now. And he reached into his lip and pulled it out, showed the jury, and put it back in. And I'll never forget that moment. I still use that as an example of don't ask a question you don't know the answer to. Because he really didn't have, the prosecutor was so rattled after that. Where do you go after that? So that stuff was happening out there on a weekly basis.
No, Dean, I can attest, the dip story. I know, a lot of people were maybe still are dipping, but the one about the double wide is so funny because I encountered a similar thing. I went out there, I think I was covering for you, Dean, when they were doing the construction on the courthouse. And I went out and I remember the jail was not too far away, right, from the courthouse. And I stopped somewhere and I said, one of the officers, I said, oh, excuse me, I'm covering for Dean. They're like, oh yeah, Dean's son, And they're like, what's your name? And I'm like, oh, Layne. And they're like, well, Layne, here's the situation. It's right over there. They pointed right toward the, and I said, is it behind the mobile home or, so I can attest. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100% true story out there. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, that insight. It was a different world, and yet it wasn't. It was a very family atmosphere, right? In a lot of ways. I felt like, tell me if this is true, like the judges really knew everybody very well. A lot of times knew the families, a lot of times, and tried to fashion sentences that were very appropriate, if that makes sense. There was a personal touch, is what I'm saying, right?
Everybody knew everybody out there, and Gilchrist County especially. Levy County, bigger county, much bigger geographically. Different cities, but basically 2 cities in Gilchrist County, Trenton and Bell. So there's everybody knows everybody in those 2 areas, and it was like everybody was. It was so nice. I remember when I first went out there. At that time, I had hair, first of all, and I also had an earring, and that was a big deal.
I've got to see this picture, Dean. You don't have to have it handy, do you? Email it to me so I can post it.
I've destroyed everything that has any suggestion of that. In fact, that's the first time I think I've admitted that in 20-something years. So
I'm a good interviewer.
Yeah.
Okay. David Frost, my son, right? Sue Wagner. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you actually had how did that go over in those counties? You had longer hair and an earring?
I didn't have long hair. I just had hair.
Okay.
I don't think it. I became friends with all those people that were suspicious of a lot of that stuff, and I think that's, we're having a lot of that problem right now in our country, that people just don't try to understand or get other people, and once we get to know each other, things go a lot smoother, and we realize that we have a lot more similarities than not. So I never had a problem out there. I mean, I remember that I got some feedback from the public defender saying, "Oh, wow, I've heard a lot of people talking about the guy you sent out here with the earring." That disappeared after a month or two, and so did the earring. I was newly married then and told that's a bad look, so I got rid of that.
Thank you, Dean, for sharing that.
I mean, it wasn't like a feather or anything. I mean, it was.
Feather in the cap. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Legal pet peeves. Okay. This triggers. What's a trigger list for Dean in the legal system? What really, I think you mentioned a little bit, we do need criminal justice reform. Heck, I thought it was something all parties agree upon, but it never gets any traction, right? This war on drugs, where we were locking up, it seemed like just vast numbers of individuals, right? Everything, there's minimum mandatories, in Gainesville, everything was in 1,000 feet of a school, church, or right, daycare.
Yeah, but those are big, societal issues. I don't call those pet peeves.
Okay.
What I would pet peeves for me would be number one, your word is gold. When you say something to an opponent or your client, but mostly I'm talking about among lawyers and among the judiciary, once you burn that bridge that you can't be trusted for what you say, you're going to regret it. And I had I don't want to keep telling war stories, but this is kind of a story that emulates what I'm talking about. Is had a lawyer come up to me once and say, I asked the prosecutor for a 60-day continuance because we're going to pay the restitution in a criminal case. And if I pay the restitution, we're going to get a different result ahead of time if we pay it, the restitution before the result. And he said, so I got him to agree to continue it 60 days with the understanding that we'd pay it. But then I found this loophole that you can only ask for restitution for 30 days. And if it wasn't ordered within 30 days, you could ask for it to be dismissed. And he's like, and he was coming to me for advice. And I said, what, you told them to continue it 60 days because that's how long it would take you to pay the money. And now you're going to go back and file a motion to dismiss that. That's not a good look. You said something and you told the prosecutor, this is what we're going to do. And then you kind of try to backdoor in a legal argument. That prosecutor will never trust you, never give your client a break. Plus, you want to be the guy that, if something happens, example was just this morning, I had 2 cases on the docket and they were supposed to have been continued. The judge did continue them several days ago, but it hadn't been put in writing, so it was still on the docket. And many judges would require lawyers to come in, and all I had to do was the prosecutor called me and I said, yeah, these were already continued to this date. That was the end of the issue. And so that's the kind of way it can help you out in the future. Plus, you want people to believe you, that what you say is true. So that's one of my pet peeves is integrity among your peers and colleagues is really important. And so when you say something or you guarantee something, or you say you're going to do or not do something, if you're going to do it or not do it, and you change your mind, tell somebody you changed your mind. Don't just change it and go against what you already said.
Just be upfront.
And doesn't mean there isn't strategy in not telling. You don't have to give up everything. But when you do say something and you agree to something, you're bound by it. And if you're going to change that, you need to let everybody know that you've said that I'm changing my mind, and here's why. The other thing that I have a pet peeve for is lawyers that talk a lot, and I'm not directing that at you.
Any way, shape, or form.
I may have mentioned it once or twice over the years.
I think Russian novel was used a couple of times. Yeah. Getting paid by the word. I believe,
it's just on your emails and texts, buddy.
With the footnotes, yes.
Yeah, but I think a lot of lawyers love to hear themselves talk for some reason, and it doesn't mean that people have different styles, and I understand that. Not everybody's style is, but I hear attorneys ramble on and on sometimes just because they don't want to end because they know the result's going to be bad.
Yeah.
Or they try every way in the world to say something in a circular way when you can get to it directly. And I think you make your point better when you get to it directly if you have a good point to be made. But most importantly, reading the room. You know, if you're making an argument on a suppression issue or a dismissal or a piece of evidence, if the judge is talking to you like, listen, I'm going to give you what I want, shut up, stop talking. He's going to give you what you want. I see attorneys talk the judge out of what the judge was going to give them. And so, you know, particularly when I teach now and I see that happening, and I'm like, why do you keep talking? Judge is leaning towards you. You can tell he's going to give you what you want. And I say it all the time, you know, if we have a what's called an open plea, so it's not negotiated. I make my mitigation argument, and I can tell the judge is kind of leaning towards what I'm saying, or is willing to accept an agreement that you may not think he's going to accept. If he's indicating to you you're going to accept it, I look at him and I say, if you're going to take what I'm asking for, I'm going to shut up. And they appreciate that. And they'll say, I am going to give you what you want. And thank you. So talking more isn't always better. And, you know, at the same time, if you have a point to be made, you need to make it. You need to make it thoroughly. You can't let anybody kind of bully you out of it. But, you know this. There's some lawyers that just won't stop talking. So those are kind of my pet peeves. Just little things. And like I said, not everybody's style is the same. And so what works for me may not work for you or someone else. And you got to use your own style. All I can do is kind of give tips of what's worked for me and what I've seen work for others that aren't my style. You know, I'm much more animated in court and trial than guys that are much more intellectual. And they're some of the most brilliant lawyers I've seen that make the intellectual arguments staring at their yellow pad, right? And they convince juries of the same thing I'm trying to convey in a different manner. So there's no one way. And so I always tell everybody, find what fits for you, and you know, just kind of hone it over the years. And you can't be somebody you're not.
Thank you, Dean. Yeah, thank you for that advice. In fact, you helped me once. I remember you. I think you were sitting maybe in the courtroom at the time. Had a jury trial, and you had actually told me, Layne, simplify, simplify, simplify. You like talking, okay, but simplify for the jury. And I was in front of the jury, and I actually caught myself, and I told the jury, I said, I just caught myself. I was going to make the same argument to you the third time in a row. And they kind of, you know, they smiled. And I said, and it was going to be in different worded, you know, verbiage, obviously, right? But I said, but you've heard, you know, the arguments. I hope that you will fairly consider them today, right? You know, for not guilty. And it worked out. They nodded, appreciated the fact that I shut the book, right? And went back, you know, and sat down with the defendant. So I think that is stellar advice.
Yeah. So when I was saying talking too much, like I said, you have to make your point, and you have to make every argument that's a good argument.
Exactly.
Right. That point. But don't make it the 10th time.
Right.
And particularly if you read a jury that's not listening to you anymore, that's the worst thing you can have.
And Dean, you did something in a trial which was extremely effective. I thought it was the prosecutor. You actually called out the prosecutor and you said, he made this argument 10 times to you, and you told the jury, just because you say it over and over and over and over and over again doesn't make it true.
Right.
And that, I saw the jury looking at you and nodding. That resonated with them, right? And I think you actually, you know, were able to kind of capture that moment, right? And this is the you know, same point you're making, but you used it as a tool, you know, as well.
Well, I think too much. You know, the kind of high profile, high publicity cases that, you know, have a lot of TV cameras and are set in places unlike us, whether it's LA or New York. That's like, where I practice. And it's not my demographic, it's not my population. Um, so they get a much broader group of people uh, to handle those kind of cases because they're under such scrutiny and everybody acts differently in front of TV cameras. I don't care what they say, they do. Um, so we have a fairly highly intelligent jury pool here. And so I don't think they appreciate if they think that you're just kind of trying to persuade them by repeating something over and over again. Um, they want to know the points you have to make that will help them make a decision. Um, they're not going to just be persuaded, because you're flailing your arms, which I've been known to do, or just because you keep talking. So you got to read the room.
I've got some students, they're doing moot court, different types of things. In terms of jury selection, real quick, just a few seconds, Dean, can you tell us, are there any jurors that you just avoid like the plague? Are there
No.
others that you like generally? Like you're talking about, you really want them to think about things, right? And be a critical thinker and analyze, right, what's going on.
It's one of those things that I don't think there's anything more important to a criminal trial than the jury, right? What kind of jury you have. And I also think that there's no way to predict how you're going to get a good jury. I mean, you could do all the tricks, and I use as many things as I can. We have jury analysts and all those kind of folks that can help us out.
We do.
But we don't have polygraphs on these folks. And sometimes they're not telling you the truth, and you can't force them to admit something. And and just because you may stereotype one occupation or one age group or whatever it is, that you stereotype those people as being more or less likely to convict somebody. Those don't always hold true. Personal experiences in somebody's past background may change that, and so you have to try to get as much of that out as you can. My style, Layne, is a little irreverent and a little bit. I'm not afraid to put a little comedy in what I'm doing, and so my job at jury selection is to use my skills and try to make people feel at ease. Use a little bit of humor, get them to because they're all you're in a really new arena for a lot of these folks, and it's stressful for them sitting under a bunch of lights with guys in suits asking questions and objections and sidebars, and they're just sitting there not knowing what's going on. That I always found it important to kind of put them at ease, make a few jokes, and then maybe they'll put their guard down a little bit and be a little more honest. And I always like to get people that seem to appreciate that would smile a little bit. People that were real serious, I get a little worried about. But jury selection is a one of the areas that I always, out of all the areas I practice and I've struggled with the most.
Really, because I think you excel at it. I think you have a very good rapport. I've been involved in many of your trials, sure. Dean.
Well, I'm comfortable. I'm never. Maybe I'll never. What I just said to start this will always be a struggle. And why I think this is because you never know.
Yeah. Well, right? I don't think
until the verdict comes out, you never know.
That's true. That's true. But I don't think you're ever like, Layne, I'm going to let you take jury selection this time. Right. So I'm just saying in terms of skill sets, you had it at excellent rapport. I thought really you did get people to open up, which is a real talent. You and I know the truth never comes out in the first hour. Right. So you're really trying to get them to open up to you, to be honest. Right. With the responses. Yeah. God, we could spend a whole episode on this, in the future, and probably should. Inspirations. What are your inspirations?
Well, I didn't have anybody in my family that was involved in the law. And I think like you, I was a big book reader when I was younger, a big film fan. So, things like To Kill a Mockingbird or Anatomy of a Murder, or those things really made me fall in love with those kind of defense attorney arguments that would be made, fighting for the little guy and fighting injustice, fighting the man.
Now, Dean, have you ever wore that white suit, the Atticus Finch, out in Gilchrist or Levy?
I make fun of people like that.
Okay. Yes, absolutely.
Well, and I'm allowed to say that. All right, this is going to be maybe politically incorrect. Okay, but it's about me, so I think that's okay. But I can't even wear any shirts other than white or like a beige shirt, because whenever I would wear a maroon shirt or, God forbid, a black shirt, everybody would say something to me about being in the mob, being Italian, being a larger guy, and got a lot of Tony Soprano references. So
Michael Corleone, yes.
The white suit would not be a good look for me. I would, all I would need is the white hat with the black, band around it, and I would look like a guy from Mafioso Central.
Dean, every time we went out for that Italian lunch, I was worried you're going to go in the restroom and, come out and yeah.
Like I said, I'm allowed to say it. You're not.
Got it. Okay. Absolutely. Positively. Yep. I got that. No, thank you. Those are wonderful inspirations that you're mentioning. Some fun questions here. Favorite music?
Grunge.
Nirvana. Yeah, you were in grunge. In fact, I borrowed some Pearl Jam. I remember from you back in the day, I believe. Nirvana you were into. Trying to remember. Gosh, those are the bigger bands.
Yeah, I like rock music and I like reggae. That's I like classical music too.
You like jazz, right?
Not a jazz guy.
I
go to a lot of it's funny because I go to a lot of jazz.
Yeah.
But I go to jazz events because I like the people that like jazz.
Enough said. Very good.
Yeah.
How's Warren doing? Okay, next, let's go. Favorite films.
Ooh, wow.
Oh, I know, Dean, we could spend, in fact, I would love to do a branch off. After we do that jury selection thing, let's do this. You are probably the most knowledgeable. In fact, I think, remember, Dean, you told me that if there's any gap that I had prior to Turner Classic Movies, maybe, it was that Hollywood period film noir in particular, 30s post code, right? I should say code production films from the 30s. I want to say to about 1950. I think 1950, I kind of picked it up again when, Hollywood was loosening up. You have this massive, brilliant mind about movies and really know them. Anything you can recommend to our students?
Some of my favorites, Chinatown, I think is a great film, and really good for a young aspiring criminal defense lawyer, even though its messages.
That's a dark story.
No hope. Yeah, it's no hope.
It's a bit dark.
I like, as you do. You and I are big film buffs, and we talk about that a lot when we're together. I like all kinds of films. I like many foreign films, I like old classics. I love films like and even kind of what would be considered cheesy ones like Casablanca and movies like that. So I have a lot of wide range, but there's a lot of great law movies. 12 Angry Men. That was another movie I saw when I was a kid on a little black and white TV in my room when I was supposed to be sleeping at 2 a.m. That really taught me that people's perceptions can be very different. Anatomy of a Murder, the movie To Kill a Mockingbird was a good movie. So there's a lot of great law movies out there that I like. And
now you're just talking about integrity, and I'm not sure Jimmy Stewart's character in Anatomy of a Murder, if I recall correctly, there's a certain scene where he plants, or we could say, right, make some suggestions about defenses that might work versus that wouldn't work with the defendant, right?
Right. That's a fine line, Layne. That's a fine line that we're not going to talk about.
Absolutely, positively, Dean. Yeah, we will. Casablanca, I just want to share this to the students who have not seen it, an amazing, and I do want to say this, I think it's a quintessential Hollywood film, Warner Brothers, right? A little bit harder edged. In a way, it had the stock characters that were just brilliant, right? In every other Warner Brothers movie, right? They were on contract in the movie. And what you told me, Dean, really resonated with me. You said you saw it finally in HD or Super HD or whatever it was, and it was a different experience. And I will tell you, that is true. We went back and rewatched it. There is so much nuance to that film And there's so much that is not said, not expressed, but right beneath the surface. It creates a Casablanca world, right, outside of the film
Sure.
that you're in, so I do consider that just if I would really say that's the epitome of the can we call it the typical Hollywood production system,
Sure.
at the time? Yeah. At the time, and the foreign things, were different. Great God, what a great list of movies. Closing thoughts, and this is Dean. We talked about everything, across the spectrum. If there was one piece of advice, deathbed, and you want to give it to the law students, or just send it out to humanity, what would you like to leave our viewers with?
Well, for folks that want to go to law school, like I said, I got lucky because when I was going to graduate, I had no idea no area of the law really interested me. So I didn't know whether I was going to go back to school for something else. I was a guy that loved international relations and history. And so I was thinking about just going to get my PhD for that. But one of the things, and I have a lot of interns and law clerks that are in school at UF. I've had, undergraduate interns. And one of the things I see a lot of people doing that want to go to law school, and this kind of runs contrary to my own experience, but I see a lot of people going to law school without really knowing what kind of law they want to practice. I see a lot of, thoughts that, law and order is not real life. And so
Not a murder every week, right?
not a murder every week. It's not all exciting the way they make it. There's no music that follows you. And so I see a lot of people going to law school and graduating. I see a lot of people want to be environmental lawyers. You see that it's very popular. And then when you look at the job market for environmental lawyers, do you know what that means? You may be working for a water district, or you may be working for an oil company. A lot of people think that environmental lawyer means that there's a lot of jobs out there fighting for the environment that, and you can do that, but you're not going to get paid well for that. And so I see a lot of people not understanding what kind of legal jobs there are. And I certainly didn't. So, but I see it now, and I see so many people go to law school and they get out of law school and they never practice law in their life. And that seems like a long 3 years and a lot of stress and anxiety to do something that you're never going to use, and something that when you get done doing it, you don't like it. Almost every area of the law is going to have some form of confrontation. It doesn't mean it's yelling and screaming and violent or angry, but you're going to have to disagree with people. And some people don't like disagreeing with other people. I think they're mainly called nice people, Layne, unlike me, who doesn't hesitate to say when I disagree with a point being made. So I think people just thinking, oh, I have a law degree and that sounds good. Make sure that's what you want to do, or at least have a good idea that's what you want to do. It may change and you may not like it after you get involved. And don't hesitate to follow what you really like, because you're not going to want to do what you don't like. And if you do it, you're not going to be happy. So I think the most important thing for people that want to go to law school and become lawyers is kind of have an idea of what that means. When you graduate, there's a job market, and are those the kind of jobs you want to work? And I see people taking on particularly, and I'm using environmental law because I just seen that a lot lately with people that are friends of mine. That they some of them have these huge debts, and they get out and they realize, wait, environmental law means I work for a zoning department, or I work for a construction company. That's exactly the opposite of what I want to do. You want to go work for Greenpeace or some organization like that, great, but you better know what that means. That means you're not making a lot of money, and there's a lot of sacrifices. It's great work. I mean,
And Dean, one thing, thank you for bringing that up. I don't want my students to become unenamored with the law. You're right. They may believe very strongly in the environment, sustainability, right? But you may find yourself working, for example, for a water district, right? You get a different governor in place, things change, and politics can drive a lot. And I really, I think it's incumbent upon our students, before you spend $200,000 or $300,000, 3 years of your life, right? Do a little bit of research, right? Or, hey, we're talking to a lot of undergrads today. Go out and shadow, try to shadow, just talk to an attorney that's practicing the area of law you want to practice, right? You would recommend that? Okay.
Sure. I've certainly had guys that I've mentored that are undergraduate, and it's like the first thing I teach them is make sure you understand what we're talking. I've particularly gravitate towards me. I want to be a criminal defense lawyer. Okay. Do you have any idea what that means? And a lot of them don't. A lot of them don't understand it. There's a lot of grinding. It's not all. As well as I do, the worst thing to learn the law from is watching a TV or program or a movie. They don't follow much of what's legal in those things. And so you can't base it on that or the Pelican Brief or whatever novel you may be reading. So just make sure that you expose yourself to those things. And that's why I think, as I started this whole conversation, that kids are much more prepared now, or even, non-traditional age students. There's plenty of those that are now going to law school, that you understand and expose yourself to what you want to do, and see if that's for you or not. And lawyer's a good profession, but it's not about wearing fancy clothes and driving a nice car.
Thank you. I think that's an excellent comment to leave it on. Dean, I want to thank you for being my legal idol. We talk a lot about intersectionality now, and you are certainly a multi-dimensional human being. We don't carry these tags around with us, right? I could say Dean is great at jury selection or persuasion, argument, this and that. Actually, also giving advice now. I'm finding out you certainly give me enough advice over the years, which I think I always took to heart. Even if I didn't always follow it, Dean, I always took it to heart, right? And has had great influence on me. I cannot thank you enough for sharing with myself, my students, members of our community. Send the bill over, and trying to follow. I'm a man of complete integrity, that. So
and I'm not just saying this to because you've said nice things about me, but you are one of my favorite people, and you're one of the most genuine people I've ever met in my life, and you have made me a better person by being so nice to people. And I've learned a lot from you about communication and listening, and because I don't always have the best patience with people. And so, I appreciate that you've given me that in my life.
Thank you. I think we've certainly, helped each other when we needed to. I'm so glad this was recorded, Dean. Again, can't thank you enough. I wish you the best afternoon today and, of course, in the future. And I look forward to talking to you in the future as well. Thank you again.
Well,